Welcome back, Battletech enthusiasts. This is a replacement or update to my really old video, pre-COVID days, for Brawlers. And so we're going to discuss various specific features and what you want in one. If you take a mech and you split it into take its tonnage and distribute it into weapons, armor, and engine / gyro, etc. for speed, what you find is that since there's only 3 main categories, ignoring long range versus short range weapons, etc., there's like 3 things that use up your tonnage. You either got speed, armor, or weapons. So depending on how you split these kind of determines what class of a mech you have. And a perfect example of this is the Archer. Now it's got LRM-20s, so you'd think, damn, that thing's a long-range support mech, isn't it? And you would be right. Mostly. And we'll discuss that later on in this video. And the easiest way to recognize a brawler is just to pick up one of these mech books that has spec sheets for mechs and just flip through it. And every once in a while, you just find one that has an ungodly amount of armor. Well, guess what? You just found your brawler. Or at least that's a pretty easy algorithm for finding them. Now, this would exclude things like the Warhammer and the Marauder, because if you look at them, they're kind of thinly armored compared to some of the other mechs like the Orion that have similar weights. And that would be correct, because the Warhammer and the Marauder are actually not good brawlers, but they are good support mechs or space control mechs or other functions. And a calculation you can do, because tonnage is not really the metric of choice, it's actually battle value, is take your number of tons of armor times 16, or just your number of points of armor, divide it by your battle value 2 cost. If it's greater than 0.0075, the mech that you found is likely a brawler. So now let's talk specific mechs. The Locust LCT-1V, 10 points of armor in the center torso. That's more than most other light mechs, even things much bigger than it, like the Jenner. This makes it a beast of a brawler tank, even though it lacks the firepower of the 1S or the 1E. Now, Wolfhound, this is a pretty decent, it's a pretty lightweight mech, but it can hold its own. So this can be a good frontline light mech for brawling purposes. You can try it out. And now, the Urbi. The Urbanmech, even though it only moves at 2-3, it's got jump jets and an AC 10. This makes it the nightmare terror of the small mech category. The light mechs, this thing is like a horrible terror monster. Its only drawback is that it's super slow, so it cannot be a bodyguard. So you need to have a support, maybe a LCT-1S or some other, or maybe even if you play them like Wasp or Stinger or something kind of weak but with more firepower or more maneuverability like that to back it up. Next up, the Hermes Ii. At least in my computer simulations, this one is a fairly good tank. And you can tell it's got a reasonably high amount of armor for its small size. So again, Hermes II could be a standard light mech brawler. Now we're going to just gloss over some pretty obvious ones. Hatchet Man, I mean, it's got a hatchet. What more do you need to know? The Hunchback, I mean, AC-20, what more do you need to know? Then there's the Enforcer and the Vindicator. In my simulations, the Vindicator is the first mech that is able to have a reasonable chance of defeating an Atlas. So for that reason, that is heads on, one-on-one. So that's why I list the Vindicator as a strong brawler. When I say reasonable, I mean a very small, but not almost utterly zero. Now, a really obvious one is the Hoplite. Just make sure you pick the 4B and not the 4C variant. The 4C variant is just not the greatest, but 4B is so heavily armored that it's just completely shocking. So that is an awesome brawler. Another one is actually, if you look at the Cataphract, if you look at its right arm, it's actually a Marauder's right arm. And if you look at its left arm, the shoulder socket is actually the kind of the Marauder's shoulder socket, and its legs are Marauder legs. That's because the Cataphract is a chimera of different mechs made by the Capellans from parts that they could just kind of scrape together. That's at least the story version of the mech. Now, the Dragon and Grasshopper have special status as brawlers. If on face value, they don't seem that great, because if you just flip through a spec sheet book, they don't have as many armor bubbles as some of the other mechs near them. But nevertheless, the Dragon is fast, and you pair it with a Jenner as a bodyguard, and it's like a good combo. And the Grasshopper, its jump jets, it can be a brawler, or it can be a bodyguard for a large brawler. Those jump jets allow it to jump and maneuver exactly like a bodyguard needs to do. And it just has something, it's got that LRM in its head. It can kind of peck things off at the distance too. Chargers, there's the 1A and there's the A5 variants. Make sure you get the A5 variant. The A1 variant was a cute effect with 5 small lasers. It just doesn't work that well. Thunderbolt, that's better for pro players because it's complicated and tends to overheat. The Orion is just a mass pile of armor. That's a good one. The Victor, shown in the middle here, is also a pretty good one. The Stalker that I have to the left of the Victor and the Battlemaster here, that is a pro mech. The problem is you kind of have to be a pro to play it because it tends to blow itself up, and it just has too many weapons. You want to use them, but you can't. Then a very interesting surprise, well, not such a surprise brawler. The Battlemaster is pretty good. It is a little bit under heat sinked, but it's okay. It's got a fairly large amount of armor compared to other mechs in its same size, class, and battle value region. The surprise brawler of them all is the Archer. Like, what the hell, you might think? The Archer? Isn't that a long-range support mech? Yes, but it can double as a brawler. It's just got, depending on what rules you play by, you can play with battle fists, which gives it punching benefits. But it's a lot of armor, and it's way heavily armored for just being wasted as a long-range support mech. That is a frontline brawler after it serves its purpose with its missiles. Now, the other brawlers in this larger category, there's like a Cyclops, there's Banshees, all kinds of variants. The 3S Banshee is good, the 3E not so much. The Cyclops, the stock Cyclops is more of a story mech as a command mech than as a effective or very effective mech. But one of the most awesome mechs of them all is the Awesome. In my computer simulations, it's almost undefeatable one-on-one against anything. The Atlas can beat it, but pretty much nothing else can. It's just completely awesome. However, it's a little tricky. Its optimum strategy, even though it's a brawler, is not necessarily at point-blank range. you want to keep the distance because of its minimum distance on its PPCs, but it can come in, it can just kick and punch at point blank range. It's got armor in the back, it's got everything you need. Maybe you want to support it, but it is a powerful brawler. And then finally, we start approaching our ultimate Brawler Max. And what's the ultimate Brawler Mech? It's the Atlas. Oh, and by the way, the Zeus is okay, but it's more of a support mech. It's not really. It's very maneuverable, and it's got some heavy weapons in its arms, so it can kind of shoot around, has wide arcs. But it's more of a support mech for an Atlas. So you rather pair the Zeus with an Atlas and have the Zeus be a bodyguard, whereas the Atlas itself is the primary brawler. Now the Atlas is very expensive battle value wise, but it doesn't matter. It's better than that for its brawler wise than its battle value. So it's actually cheap. So the Atlas is undercosted in battle value for how good it is. So even if you're tempted to get other things, if you're able to afford an Atlas in your force, get an Atlas.